And welcome back to the Pixelvision podcast. I'm Gamer Rez, and once again I'm joined by
Deft Beck.
And with special guest today,
Melora. She's new.
Sort
new
of.
and improved.
Not exactly improved.
Doesn't new and improved mean like it's replacing something?
Well, it's replacing the fact that she was never here before. It's an absence that she's replacing.
There's a substitute.
For who?
For the entity.
Your sleep paralysis demon.
So, is he the eggs and she's like the egg carton?
What?
You pour eggs out of the carton.
This is a podcast about video games, everybody.
Pour eggs out of the carton. Like those...
Yeah, egg replacements.
Like those no yolks? Like those...
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I just drink those straight out of the carton, baby.
Oh, hell yeah.
If you were to put one of those on, like, a burner and, like, and you heat it up, would it just make a carton full of scrambled eggs? Have I just discovered a life hack?
Probably.
This podcast is brought to you by Betty Crocker, apparently. Alright,
So
now...
tell Homestuck's that.
Let's not. Alright, so actual podcast topic is actually going to be something completely unrelated to that. Game stores.
Specifically, we're talking about mainly GameStop, but also game stores in general, like local game stores, what's left of like competition, at least in North America. And thinking about old game stores, the game stores we have today, and then the future of games at retail.
Or lack thereof at this rate.
Yeah, that's the doomsday scenario, huh?
Yeah.
That's the bad ending. Yes.
But the future refused to change.
Is there gonna be like actual edgy cartoons coming out 20 to 30 years from now where it's like, oh yeah, back then we used to buy games here. Oh, you didn't just download them into your brain like you do now?
You have to use the games, you have to put the games in the console. That's like a baby's game. I'm butchering that quote from Back to the Future.
You're butchering that horribly.
Yeah.
Press here, you dumb fuck.
What?
The Wally Bear episode of EBGN.
Oh.
There's literally just a giant sticker that says press here.
What, to press down in the NES?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Because if they bought that game, obviously they already had a Nintendo Entertainment System. Obviously, they would have no idea how to put the game in.
That was such a bad design for the original NES, though. They purposely made it look like a toaster just to sell it in the US as more of a toy than a... Or not more as a toy, but less of a toy, I should say.
Less of a video game console, more of a toy.
Yeah. Or no, they didn't want to... It was hard to tell what they wanted to make it be out. They wanted to be futuristic. So they thought toaster. Futuristic toaster.
Finally.
You don't put the cartridges on top of the system, you insert them and close the lid, and then magic happens.
Think of Mario
But
Brothers.
toasters have lids.
Yeah?
Actually, there are a toaster oven.
Yeah?
But that's not a lid.
Toaster ovens are so bougie, like, I'm gonna put...
Well, what is it, a door?
Yes, it's a door.
It's basically serving the same purpose as a lid.
So, back to game stores.
Well, at least that was game-related.
So with game stores, we can't really speak about the 70s and 80s, but how it used to be when games were first being sold at retail is you would actually go to department stores. Like Sears made variants of the original Atari and ColecoVision consoles, from what I remember.
Yes, they did.
So you would actually go up to some guy in a suit and be like, hey dude, I'm a family man, I make $500 a year, and I want to spend all $500 of that on a game console for my children only.
No other children. Just my children.
And then when they go to sleep, maybe I'll go and play a round of Pong. Only one, and then I'll go to bed like an adult.
This is like Atari's advertising at first.
Yeah. Like, if you look up old commercials, like, this is how they would pitch the game consoles to you, because there were only, 2 games.
Well, no, Atari actually had a shit ton of games.
No, but, around when games were first being sold at retail, it was a big thing. They would go and, talk to the OEMs or whatever, and then they would make the Sears Roebuck, or the whatever department store thing. Or in Japan, they would have, the TV game units, like Nintendo made one, there were a couple other ones.
Well, those were all, basically Pong and, Pong clones, though, basically, at first, right?
Yeah, similar to what the Odyssey did. But the point is you would get them all through the department stores. You get them through catalogs. You wouldn't necessarily,
So you're talking the late 70s, early 80s right now?
Yes.
Okay.
You would buy the console at retail for, 1 game. And then it wasn't until the emergence of cartridges that games at retail really evolved, because suddenly you have a selection. You have more than 2 games you could play.
Oh, okay, now this is making more sense. You're saying Atari, I was thinking of 2600. I'm like, oh, they had tons. But now I see, you're talking about systems with the games just basically.
When games were first being sold as a consumer product at retail.
Well, actually, oddly enough, the Odyssey did have cartridges. You know, they had great games like 1 and 2 and even 5.
And you could
Don't forget Haunted House.
I think that was still just a number.
Did it have like an overlay that's like, here's the spooky house?
Yeah.
You can go in the house. There's a ghost there.
The Magnavox Odyssey was less of a game system, more like an
imagination simulator.
Yeah, it was probably so cool when you were younger and you just dreamed up all these grandiose scenarios.
It reminded me of like fucking...
just these little tiny
You need 60 frames per second. Your imagination is unlimited, friend.
It reminded me of... You could get the same basic result if you just put up clear paper on your TV and pointed at it with a laser pointer. It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. So, by the time the 2600 and the ColecoVision arrived, you started seeing much more of a presence of these games at retail. Much more marketing built around ensuring kids knew of the latest games and how they came out. You even had the first...
Hey, you're gonna play Pole Position!
You're misquoting it. It's that we're going out for a Sunday drive. No, you ain't! You're gonna play Pole Position!
Shit, that I have to edit that now, or it's going to kill someone's eardrums.
Hey, you can't forget Star Wars.
Some game!
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Atari's advertising was insane. But you know what's important, though, is those commercials, especially the Star Wars one, showed somebody walking in the store asking for the game.
Yeah.
Right. Or
you have that situational aspect.
Or that commercial, I think Mega 64, someone made fun of it recently, where it's like the guy trying to sell like the Super Nintendo versus the Genesis.
Oh. Was there really any competition? Well, we're not really at that point yet.
But there was more of a salesman aspect to it. You had to go push the things that were actively like making more of a profit margin for the store, depending on the partnerships they made with their particular manufacturers.
God, I can just see that now. Hey, you look like a smart guy, don't you? Yeah, you know, you're a real family man. You want to bring the whole family together and make them feel like you're the best breadwinner? Let me tell you something. I got the Atari 2600. It comes with the best games available right now. I tell you right now, in America, the greatest country on earth, you buy that, you take that home, you're going to be the hero of your whole household. I can get that stuff for only 4 payments now, easy at $7.99. That's probably too high. This is like, it's going to be like what? $2.99?
I don't know how money works.
Well, inflation.
I'm sure.
How much was Atari when it first? How much was it at 2600 when it came out?
Let me just Google inflation. Whoops!
Now the FBI is on your hands. Oh no!
The FBI is on my hands.
Is on your ass.
On your hands.
Someone's on your ass. DeviantArt.
But games.
Google inflation with money afterwards, and you'll be fine.
I remember seeing photos of when Pong was the big Christmas game. There would be stacks of Pong against the fucking PS4. And people would be, like, lining up for Pong.
Have you all heard of Pong in a Barrel?
No.
Yes, they actually manufactured Pong cabinets in barrels. So they weren't really cabinets. It was literally Pong in a barrel.
I feel like this would be a really weird way to advertise Donkey Kong.
Donkey Pong?
Oh no.
Donkey.
I'm glad. I hope that was never a thing. I'm just imagining DK and Diddy just like, and he just gets angry at him, just punches someone, loses. And it's in a barrel.
And as the 2600 and cartridge-based systems arrived, retail channels were just suddenly inundated with anyone can make a game for this. There wasn't really much of a licensing system.
No, that was part of what Atari's downfall was. Basically, anybody can make a game for Atari, and Atari's like, okay.
So no one knew what the good games were. They were just filling the stores, and they were just like, okay, we just got rid of all this crap because no one's buying it. Everyone's overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, basically, in terms of like, looking at what games to get, you'd have like holiday guides to look through, and all of them they just want to sell things. They don't care if it's good or not, so we'll just say, hey, this game is coming out. Here's a brief description and maybe a screenshot.
Here's like a little like postage stamp screenshot of the game.
Yes.
Or if you're lucky, here's like the N64 box, $79.99, Quest 64. That sounds awesome.
I hate Quest 64. I hate that game so much.
Oh,
that was
great.
Thankfully, that was nothing more than a Blockbuster rental on a really crappy weekend.
So then, after the game crash, and everyone got rid of all their Atari games, the NES came in, and I think what probably ended up fostering this culture of what we're going to refer to as the curate. Like, you know, the old game store clerks actually knew about video games beyond like whatever they just like.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, you know, you go to, remember like old movie theaters where you could ask like the person like at the thing if their movie was good or not. Like there was more, before you had a magic rectangle which you could look at the star rating on IMDb or Letterboxd, you'd actually have to kind of talk to people.
Yeah, but the nice thing though with that though is because it was so much more of a new thing, there was, I would say, more of a genuine aspect to it as far as the customer service goes and the level of respect you get. Especially probably as gaming started become not only mainstream, but more of an expected thing by the NES, Genesis, and even Super Nintendo. Like
everyone
era.
Played games at some point.
Yeah, it wasn't what it is now, where some people are really making millions of dollars playing it on Twitch or YouTube channels or whatever, but it was, at this point, accepted as something at least beyond just a children's toy by the mid-90s or so, maybe even early 90s.
The mid-90s was a big teenager thing.
Not at all. I was a kid and I played them. I was less than 10 years old. But
it shifted from let me go buy a game for my child to distract them from how much of a failure I am to I'm a teenager with a job.
Wow, gee. Trying to call out my mom like that, man?
No.
It was awful of you.
I grew up with an NES in my house. My parents actually, they got one as kind of a housewarming gift for themselves, and...
Well, it doesn't make a lot of heat.
Huh?
Well, you'd buy an Xbox 360, but you'd have to wait like 20 more years.
No, what I was referring to in my little hypothetical there was just like the Family Man, like, death of a salesman kind of dad.
I still feel that's awful of you to like think like you buy a game console for your child, distract what a failure you are, as opposed to what, buy them
you didn't see that scene
a private island.
You didn't see that scene in Mad Men where he goes up to his kids, "Here, kids, here's the new ET game. I bought it for you."
No. Well, I think it depends
That didn't
technically.
actually happen.
With this,
I honestly have not seen it.
We could possibly introduce the extra talking point of rushing games out, which is still a thing that happens, of course. But you would have a lot of these games and contributing to the crash you would have. All these games that would be rushed out for the Christmas season.
Like Pac-Man or E.T.
Yeah, yes. Pac-Man especially, too. Actually, Pac-Man arguably is what started the video game crash, and E.T. was like the nail in the coffin. Because Pac-Man was so popular, and when people got that port, they were so disappointed. They just associated that are basically console video games. Remember, the crash only affected consoles, not video games as a whole. In fact, the arcade carried on very well during this time, as well as PCs. But they associated console games with just terrible quality, and E.T. was the final nail in the coffin because the movie was so critically acclaimed and the game was such garbage.
Yeah, so a lot of the game stories in the the computer locked. Awkward.
Yeah, I think it's still recording, though. I forgot to download caffeine on this.
Oh. Just pretend that didn't happen.
Oh, it keeps it awake, caffeine?
Shit.
I love that so much.
You literally never downloaded caffeine.
No,
I haven't. It's been around since Windows 98.
That's funny as fuck, I love it.
It's still recording. We're fine. Just remind me to move the mouse a bit now and then.
So not to romanticize it too much, but a lot of stories in the... probably from the early 90s to the maybe mid-2000s were much more about, to a certain extent, the world was a little smaller, I guess. eBay wasn't as big of a dominating force.
No,
eBay, Amazon, all of the online retailers.
Yeah, it was first announced even, I remember it had like a ridiculous commercial of a guy singing with a top hat on. When you do it, eBay. I don't even know why they did that.
Well, just put yourself in the space of being 13-year-old RJ walking into a game store. What was it like? Were you looking for an item? Were you just browsing?
So by the time I was 13, God, how old do you think I am? By the time I was 13, GameStop took over. You want to talk absolute best days? I would actually say more like 10 or 11 because you still had Funcoland.
All right, so talk about Funcoland.
Okay, so before GameStop, which before it was even Gamestop, it was actually EB Games, basically bought out a grand deal of the local game store scene at Funcoland, which still was a chain, but it was definitely a lot more human chain, I guess you could call it, basically, in terms of how it operated. They were one of the first of its kind to have that level of customer service where you weren't walking in there just to buy something. Like, I'd go into... Like, my mom bought my PS2 at Sears. I know she did. So she bought it from a Sears floor. It's like, yeah, the PlayStation 2? Yeah, we got... That was the extent of that conversation. You go into Funcoland, you could literally talk to people about the latest games. You want to talk about Mega Man. It's like, hey, man, you got new Mega Man with that. Back in that time, it'd be like, hey, you got the Mega Man Anniversary Collection, for example. Also, Funcoland, that was when they were carrying what was even still considered retro at that point, carts. So that's where I actually bought a lot of my Super Nintendo and NES games. I actually bought them in the early 2000s because Funcoland carried them, and they were for pretty fair prices.
They had binders of the prices right there, right?
Yeah, and they were actually very good with stickers, too. They had respect. Absolutely none of their games had price stickers on the game art, so you can remove it from the cartridge and it was fine.
Yeah.
Which is getting harder to find. Well, key thing to look for here. If you're looking for retro games and you find the price sticker on the art, chances are that person doesn't care about it. Period. And they're not going to give you a good conversation.
Yeah.
Not just that, though. Funcoland was the first of its kind, too, to hold stuff for you, to talk about what's coming out and everything. Whereas, you know, Sears, Walmart, Kmart, and if you're not from the area that has those kind of stores, basic department stores, they just had whatever they were told, and they were just basic employees that just wanted to get on with their lives.
Games were just commodities for them.
They had no
different
interest.
than a roll of toilet paper.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's just another product. At Funcoland, it was a hobby, a passion, a mutual interest. And that was a big deal. And that's probably where EB Games was like, yeah, we're gonna take that. And they bought them out and bought a lot of other places, too.
So where you two grew up, not the docs or anything, was it more or less, like, mostly Funcoland? Were there other major retailers that sold games?
That was the biggest major retail that I can remember. The rest would just be smaller game stores. Also, like, record stores and stuff carried video games, too, especially, like, used games. So you could buy, like, NES, Game Boy, stuff like that. Scranton video game stores, for example, is one I remember. There was one in the Viewmont Mall, too. I forget what it was called.
An independent one?
Yeah, their prices were kind of ridiculous even for their time. They sold toys a lot, too. There was still the stigma with most places associating video games with toys. Like, you could buy video games like KB Toys and Toys R Us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to love KB Toys.
And Melee.
It always seemed like more fun than Toys R Us for some reason. Like, the stores are usually a little smaller. A little more intimate, I guess.
Again, even Toys R Us, those places will treat it more like an actual product. You walk into Funcoland and you've had, like, that sense of, like, belonging, basically.
Yeah.
Much more like, here's a little, like, no, I don't want to say hovel, more like, here's a little corner where the gamers went.
Yeah, no, the place was specifically dedicated to that. And electronics, too. Gaming and electronics usually go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in my local mall there was, I explained this off mic, but upstairs there was a EB Games, and downstairs there was a chain called Babbage's, which, you know, Charles Babbage, the inventor of the computer. I always loved Babbage's a lot more because the EB Games was smaller, and the Babbage's was a lot more spread out, and they had, like, more demo stations. They had 4 demo stations throughout the store. I remember, one of my clearest memories is playing Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast at, like, the front of the store for, like, 10 minutes. Like a crisp-looking CRT.
Yeah.
And, yeah, everything was on these kind of, like, wire racks. A lot of these places had, like, a lot of wooden shelves. I remember Funcoland having, like, a really kind of lo-fi, almost, like, early 90s sort of, like, internal architecture. It was all, like, wooden shelves, like... It was very kind of warm on the inside. And the sign had all sorts of different colors, like, all the letters were in different colors, Funcoland.
Another thing to mention, still within that early 2000s time period, now that I think about it, this doesn't just go for game stores, but even EB Games, I think, did this for a short while. During around the early 2000s, this was still before online gaming was a mainstay for consoles. Yeah, the Dreamcast, the PS2,
online gaming was for the PC.
Yeah, they were all experimenting with it, but it wasn't what it is today, where it's just expected, basically, of almost anybody owning a modern console at this point.
Except for Nintendo until recently.
So a lot of
Tetris 99.
Yeah, Nintendo. You're wrong. Technically, Nintendo had mainstay online with the Wi-Fi connection since the DS. Their first big hit with that was Mario Kart DS.
And technically, you could play online with the GameCube through tunneling.
Nobody cared about that.
You could play Phantasy Star Online too.
Yeah, that's niche. I said mainstay, didn't I?
Yeah.
In any case,
I never saw the broadband adapter or the dial-up adapter in a GameStop.
I have not either. In fact, I think it's quite rare. The PS2 one's not that hard to find, but the knockoff one's better for like the hard drive stuff. But what I'm trying to talk about, though, is actually the concepts of more community-focused multiplayer tournaments. So we're talking the hot fighting games at the time, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Tekken 4, I believe at that point.
They still tournament?
Halo, yeah. Yeah,
the Halo tournaments I could buy because that was such a mainstream multiplayer game.
Even
churches did Halo multiplayer.
Well, even though we had multiplayer in the 90s on things like the Super Nintendo and the N64, especially the N64, it still wasn't something people got together and did outside their homes. But by the early 2000s, it started picking up steam as something people did either at local game stores or at other places besides their houses. Like I said, specifically those games that have that local multiplayer appeal to them. Like I said, Halo, the fighting games and stuff like Soul Calibur. Melee, yeah, of course. Super Smash Brothers Melee was a big one. I remember in the Scranton Steamtown Mall, we had not like a gaming convention, but something was going on one day. Shumik actually took place.
Shoes from
Shoes.
A podcast.
Well, I could just say his last, it doesn't matter. But yeah, Shoes. Took place in a Halo tournament in the Steamtown Mall, and they also had like Smash Brothers and stuff going on there. So that was kind of a common thing in the early 2000s because online play still wasn't really big, but the idea of playing with other people outside of just your house was starting to get bigger, and prizes and stuff like that. Also, in terms of PC, while obviously it was online, a lot of people still prefer local co-ops. So
you could buy PC games in stores.
This is when LAN parties started becoming a big thing, was the early 2000s too, with games like StarCraft, Counter-Strike, and stuff like that. And you actually had places like Adventure Games, where you can go and play on their computers and play StarCraft and Counter-Strike or Star Wars Battlefront, for example.
It's like a hybrid internet cafe game store.
Yeah, I had another one too in the later 2000s called iCafe that was literally a walk from my house and felt like a godsend, and it was closed down almost a year because of people complaining about loitering, even though they never did anything wrong, which really sucks.
And there were a lot of like kind of mid-sized retailers where they sold games too. Like, I remember, I looked this up later and it kind of shocked me, but there was a department store called Leechmere that used to be in Salem, New Hampshire. It's named after the area in Boston and the train stop too. Where I remember playing Star Fox 64 for the first time, and that was like a month before they closed. I found out. Like, that was when I was like 5 years old. That was kind of a weird kind of memory of mine. Plus, you could play game demos in there, in a lot of these stores, too. It was a big deal, like, you could find games that weren't even on the demo discs, or you hadn't even heard of at these game stores, often. Or they would let you, like, go up and try out the game on the spot. Did you guys have Play and Trade?
I didn't really have anything like that, but...
Have you heard of it?
No, what is it, exactly?
Play and Trade is like, it was like indie Gamestop. There used to be a Play and Trade where the noodle places... No?
Okay.
Like, in that exact, like, area, there used to be a game store. In that physical location, there used to be a game store, like, 5 or 6 years ago. I never told you guys this because it's, it's kind of relevant now, but I remember they had a thing you could pick any game and you could try it out on the spot on, like, a TV behind the desk.
I did get to do that in Funcoland.
Yeah?
Yeah, they did have stuff like that. Like, as I stated before, they also had the ability to compete in, like, very small tournaments, nothing super major. There was no Evo or anything like that at the time.
Yeah, so what happened as the 2010s approached?
I'd say even before the 2010s, I would even say earlier than that, the corporate takeover started to begin. So EBGames, when they first took over Funcoland, in terms of my neck in the woods, because when I was younger, I barely left Pennsylvania. So I mostly just knew that, and that was really it for the most part outside of family vacations, because I was young, not even a teenager, I was still technically a preteen at that point. EBGames at first just felt like a name change. I was way too young to know really what a corporate buyout entails. So the store operated essentially the same as Funcoland did outside of the name change. They didn't change the inside much. I did start noticing more of them pop up though. Like the mall one appeared instead of just the one I had in that small little plaza where Funcoland was. And then even another one popped up eventually by Target as well. And this is all within like a 3-mile radius. That's how close together they are.
Wow.
It's almost still like that, but the one where Funcoland is completely gone now. But if I were to go back to my hometown, it's still like that. So, but that happened very slowly. And even then there was another EBGames in the mall in Scranton and Steamtown too, which is now considered a dead mall entirely, so...
You see that video about it?
I don't need to, I've lived it. I have seen that mall in almost every iteration it's existed. It's only a little bit older than me.
Now it's just a tool to promote The Office, basically. Oh, you came to Scranton because of The Office. Come buy Scranton merchandise.
She's not wrong.
No, really. We were there last time we visited. And
it was
really
depressing.
not good.
I worked there at one point, too. That was also depressing.
I'm sorry.
In short, GameStop ate every major corporate competitor, except for Walmart, because that's impossible. So, EBGames gone. Game Crazy, you know, that was, I think, Hollywood Video's attempt at making GameStop, and then Funcoland, Babbage's, they're all gone. I mean, EBGames, there are still EBGames in Canada, but it's still just GameStop.
You know, one thing I think worth mentioning, too, also, since we're talking about brick-and-mortar retail, which this still sort of falls under, is also rentals, too.
Yeah, like, you can extend that conversation to the conversation around video stores and Blockbuster and stuff.
Well, we didn't make a podcast on that yet.
I don't really have memories of Blockbuster. I never had...
I do, but...
I had Video Update, and then later on became Movie Scene. That was my local... It wasn't really local. I found
Video
that it was like
Update.
I have
like
one...
the VHS tapes.
I was just going to state the fact that Blockbuster and Hollywood Video themselves, for what I had as rental services, were also really good in terms of old video game brick-and-mortar retail, because... there was more of an effort, too, to, again, that same having what you wanted to go and get there. Hollywood Video especially, they did a good job with their movie section where they had actual art of audio films and like really old cutouts of actors and stuff placed on the walls. Hollywood Video's inside was actually really cool. And the video game section literally had giant cutouts of Samus, Link, Mario right above it. So they were already far more in tune with what they were selling to you, even as a rental service, than I would say more... Even Blockbuster was actually less inclined with it. I think Blockbuster went way out of touch in the mid-2000s.
Definitely.
And I think Hollywood Video was able to retain it until they completely went out of business in... I think it was 2008, when, by the way, their liquidation hit. Me and my friends in college just raided them for video games. We just went across the area to every Hollywood video. One of my friends, that lucky son of a bitch, found it before I could, like, walked away with the Advent Children Cloud motorcycle, in-box, sealed, for $15.
Oh my god.
Which is like $300 on eBay now.
What the hell?
That's amazing. When Movie Scene closed... I remember doing the thing where you would just look up shit on your phone.
Yeah.
Check the values.
Well,
And that was before I had an iPhone. What I would do is I found like Bayonetta for $10, and it was like $20 at the time.
Yeah.
Or like, here's Blaze Blue Central Fiction, like the sequel to Blaze Blue at the time. They were selling it for like the price of the original game.
Well, this was just the start of that era when Hollywood Video was going out of business, because I had my iPhone. And it was kind of funny because me and my friend John, for example, when I was in college with them, were already talking about the latest hacks and stuff for the iPhone. Like, oh, did you get this custom thing here? What was it?
Hear what GeoHot did?
Not just GeoHot. What was the app store for jailbroken iPhones?
Cydia.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, did you see the latest thing on Cydia and stuff?
I used to love like hacking iPhones. Android is fun. You know, it was kind of rebellious.
Well, Android itself is already open source, and I think I used to always swear by Android custom firmware. Now it's so stable, it's almost unnecessary.
It pretty much is.
But back then, it was almost I had to have custom firmware or this phone chugged.
Were you like a Cyanogen user?
Yeah, I love Cyanogen mod.
I didn't have an Android until like 2 years ago, so I'm just on the Samsung experience now.
They're very proprietary.
You can root a Samsung phone, but, you know, it's my work phone.
It's a pain in the ass to root those.
And you void your warranty.
Yeah, it's way easier to root Google actual made Android phones.
Samsung has Knox. It can tell when you try to root it, and then just set a flag that's basically permanent.
Not only that, them and HTC are notorious for basically doing their own drivers. So, oh, hey, did you want to download this app that lets you use your Wemo as a controller on your phone? Nope! That was made for actual Google drivers. You have Samsung drivers.
Rip.
Yep, get screwed.
You paid for the price of an iPhone for something that isn't an iPhone. Good job.
Yeah. If you can't jailbreak them, though, Samsung phones are pretty good.
Well, Samsung loves to do this shit where it's like, here, you have a whole extra phone. It's on us, guys. Just make sure you pay extra.
So to try and tie that random detour into the conversation again, that was during the time where smartphones were just coming out. So we were actually, during that little excursion through all the Hollywood videos as they were closing, we were actually pulling out our phones and on iPhones, I think I had a 3GS at the time. Yeah. And just going, oh my god, this is like 20 on eBay. Yes, I get this for $5. Like, and now, of course, that's just second nature to us. But then this was amazing that we were doing this. And also, because smartphones were just starting to really take off, the clerks had no idea. Now you pull your phone, look up something, and someone's like, oh, you know what? I think that game I was selling is worth more than I thought it was. So now you have to be secretive about it. You have to walk away from the person selling it and like, this guy's ripping me off, and like, walk away.
Yeah, I think she just had to get something better.
Yeah.
What also happened is, not only did GameStop buy everyone, but a lot of local game stores got really internet savvy. Even like, we didn't mention thrift stores.
I didn't really frequent thrift stores back then.
Not until like, I was
too young, and my mom never really went to them.
I only go to thrift stores as an adult.
Yeah, same. I don't think I started going to thrift stores. My mom always went to like Burlington Coat Factory, but all I ever really saw there, I think I came close to resembling video games, was, I think, Yu-Gi-Oh! Shampoo.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Shampoo?
Yes! The white dragon.
What was the flavor?
Probably something to do with white or blue. It was blue-eyes blueberry. I don't know. Maybe you buy and Kaiba yells at you and calls you a third-rate duelist unless you have clean hair with the power of white lightning. I don't know where.
So along your point, information and the ability to access it more quickly changed the landscape of physical, like, buying things at retail. Not only were the stores going away, but the remaining... For certain games that were just not available at stores because they were too old, you ended up getting into a point where, even like at the local places that were still around, like the used media stores, you know, thrift stores, pawn shops, the flea markets and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just people became a lot more savvy about looking on eBay and looking at how much a game costs, and it's like, $50, I can sell that for $65.
Yeah.
A lot of indie game stores like to do that.
Yeah, that's actually very dirty, though, because they actually really should be selling them for less than eBay prices, because the whole reason eBay prices are higher is either, one, due to scalpers, in which case they're usually ridiculously high, or two, eBay does take a cut from the seller, so the seller has to
like
kind of make a profit.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's a practice I myself personally don't respect too much, when you're literally going to sell me something for an eBay price right then and there.
What's the website that tracks game values depending on the condition?
Is it price charting?
Yes.
Yeah, it is that one.
That's
correct.
A better metric of... I mean, it does track eBay, but it also just tracks, like, people on their own little, like, listings.
Yeah.
You can sell within the website, so that's you can get historical graphs. So I don't know how long it's been around, but it's a very old-looking website.
Yeah, there's a magic equivalent of that called TCG Player. that also does like all card game stuff.
I thought TCG Player was mostly a merchant.
No, they have charts and all. They have their own API that you can really pay for to use in your website.
Oh, wow.
But in any case,
even like Goodwill does a thing now where not a lot of people know this, but Goodwill does not have fines really anymore because they instruct the employees that if anything looks more valuable than the average crap they get, then they have to go put it in the back and it'll go and like rate it for Goodwill.com and it's sold like
on auction.
Yes, which
disgusts me. Not that Goodwill honestly ever served any purpose for actually helping the poor anyway, it seems.
which like thrift stores really do that? I mean,
well, they're advertised to do it, but they really don't.
Really?
No. In fact, the fact they operate as a non-profit just means they get to dodge taxes.
Oh, look, oh.
Yeah, I just share your world there, pull you out of the Matrix a bit more.
Yikes. For the game stores that are still there, at least GameStop, even in the indie game stores, you're seeing a lot more nerd stuff or game merchandise. Sometimes they're even for games that you can't get at the store. Have you noticed that Five Nights at Freddy's, Bendy and the Ink Machine,
yes.
all the streamer games are getting toys in these game stores?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do...
had a whole aisle at Target a couple years ago.
Oh, dear God. Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do less with even people actually being so much into the game as a player, but more so into the players playing the game as streamers.
Or you're fans of the property, but not necessarily of the game. To a certain extent, that has opened up the audience for certain games.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually that harmful. I'm not against, especially because,
secondaries,
piracy and everything happening, merchandising is actually probably one of the best ways to make a sale on a property, because you're less likely to sometimes buy a game full price when you know it's going to drop. But if it's a series you're really passionate about, you might actually splurge on like the $100 super high quality figure that it was like handmade and everything.
Yeah, Melora, there was like the Fire Emblem Special Edition for Three Houses, right?
Yes, there was.
The $99 one.
Yeah, that's currently being gouged.
Yep, the Steelbook itself is $60. Just the Steelbook.
The art is very pretty.
It is, but it's not $60.
I'll give Intelligent Systems credit. Like, they actually know how to do this. Like, it seems like they found like their niche, and I'm glad they're able to do Fire Emblem as it is now, even if it's not to my taste.
Hey, it actually, it's making me want to kind of get it, because I played the last two, and I still couldn't really get into them. The art is fantastic, but the story was garbage. It's too bland and generic.
So, back on the subject, a lot of these stores are full of just crap. Not even just the games.
Yeah.
Just merchandise related to the game or to the property, sometimes just action figures, collectibles. GameStop loves doing like the glass case thing. Here's a big statue of Harley Quinn for $8.
Yeah, that's the thing that annoys me too, is it's no longer just video games. Now it's just kind of trying to just blend nerd culture in with everything else.
I mean, GameStop even bought out ThinkGeek just to do this.
Yeah, and I think...
In the New Hampshire mall we went to, there's a ThinkGeek on the second floor. We went in there, right?
Yes, and I think that is actually due to corporate misunderstanding. This is the same sin that Blockbuster attempted, where they started trying to just do everything they could to save themselves and kept losing more of their identity. There was a point where Blockbuster sold back-to-school supplies.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, really?
They were that desperate. They tried to sell back-to-school supplies in 2011, I think.
That's really desperate.
Yeah, it was bad, but this is the same thing. I remember going to EBGames, and I bought my Titus, Yuna, and Bahamut Final Fantasy X figures. Still have them, still love them. They're pretty good quality for the time. Especially the Bahamut. 2001? When FF10 came... I mean, it's 2002. Around when FF10 came out and was basically one of the best games ever on the PS2, and still kind of is.
And so it's the best Final Fantasy on the PS2. 12 has its fans. I never really played 12. Did you?
I did, yeah. I didn't like it too much. It wasn't finished, is part of the problem. I think they did...
Zodiac Age is meant to be a lot more polished.
I probably should really pick up Zodiac Age on the PS4 eventually.
I have it. You can play it. It's a long game.
I'm aware. Anthony played the original and actually fought the boss that takes 8 hours to kill. Which you have to... No, it takes actually 60 hours. You have to keep going back and forth to kill this thing. It's ridiculous. At least its health bar never recovers. You could just run away from it and go heal and come back, but the problem is it's like so deep in this dungeon, it's ridiculous. It takes like 60 hours to kill. But anyway, that's the final secret boss. But what I was saying regarding that, like my Final Fantasy figures, is that was in line with Final Fantasy. That was still video game oriented. Even, I remember they might have had some Dragon Ball figures and stuff, but the difference here is Dragon Ball games were becoming popular then. That was around when the Budokai series was starting to pick up steam, when that was coming out. So that kind of still, and they were starting to re-release all the Japanese ones, like Ultimate Battle 22, and, if you could find the English copy of GT Final Bout, it's incredibly rare.
You guys had Best Buy, right?
Yeah,
we did. Yes.
Did your Best Buy do
it's still there?
Did you guys do did your Best Buy do the thing where they had a trial run of import games?
No.
The Best Buy in Salem, New Hampshire actually did that for a brief period.
Oh my god, that's so cool! I wish ours did that. I would have loved it.
I remember seeing Jump Ultimate Stars on the shelf, and I'm like,
oh wow,
what?
Okay.
Yeah, I've only ever experienced that on a flash cart.
Like, and you would say on the back, this is an import game. This is in Japanese. Don't buy it if you don't like a Japanese game.
That's so cool.
But the reason why they did that is because Best Buy, on a national level, was trying to compete with Fry's Electronics, which for a while did sell imports.
Yeah. And hentai.
Really?
Fry's?
Oh, Fry's. Oh, I thought you said FYE.
FYE?
No, FYE actually did sell hentai. For a while.
know. I'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, we have some retail veterans here.
I have some great. yeah. Imagine that teenagers worked in retail. What is the world coming to?
I worked at a supermarket, not a retail.
I never did a supermarket, thankfully.
But a lot of what the game store, not to rag on people who work at game stores, but a lot of it is just trying to do another retail job to them, like a kind of a wage job.
Yeah, I also think this is a personal theory. I think they go out of their way to hire people that know enough about video games to sell them, but they don't want to hire actual gamers. I knew a few actual gamers that worked at GameStop, but most of the time behind the counter, it was never really that case. But and it's getting more and more less that case.
And then you have the case of, I have a friend whose name is Kiba Walker. He's a voice actor, and he actually worked at GameStop for a number of years and now does stuff for GameStop TV. He's actually on camera and talking about games and does top 10 lists of games you should go and check out.
Wow, that's lucky. Good for him. But what I was saying regarding buying the Final Fantasy figures, these were still more, and like I said, they had some Dragon Ball figures, and that was more in line with that. Now it's just literally anything anything nerdy at all, shove it in GameStop. Go to GameStop, buy your $100 Kylo Ren lightsaber. I mean, yes, I know there's Star Wars games, but they're mostly terrible now.
GameStop is turning into a toy store.
Yeah, that's a huge identity problem.
GameStop also has the issue, they're so behind in terms of other retailers that sell games. Like, Best Buy, you can buy a game on the app and go have it picked up.
Yep.
You can go and pick it up at the store. GameStop, you still can't do that.
You can't do in-store pickup at GameStop?
No, you never could.
That's weird.
You can only get games shipped to you.
I did in-game store pickup for both Resident Evil 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3 at Best Buy.
Yeah, but you cannot do that at GameStop. You have never been able to. GameStop also does not price check other gaming retailers. Not even Amazon.
No, they will not price check, but you have to pay their price, basically.
GameStop is just so far behind in so many respects that it's amazing that they're still around.
Yeah, also...
Even Radio Shack, they used to sell games.
Yeah, Radio Shack did, but Radio Shack was always general electronics store. I think they went away because of Best Buy.
No, actually, there's a long story as to why Radio Shack went away. Radio Shack, at least from the 80s onward, was meant to be your neighborhood electronics store.
Yes.
So when that started to fail because people went online, they tried to go and become a cell phone retailer. Just like GameStop actually tried to do, which is another topic entirely. But that failed, and no more Radio Shack.
Yeah, also, I remember a weird thing with Radio Shack, too, is they also had RC cars.
Yeah, I remember that too.
I got one from there for one of my birthdays when I was, a single-digit age. I don't remember which one.
Then Radio Shack also tried to do the Arduino hobbyist thing.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I did buy soldering supplies there and stuff before, speaker wire. Things you'd expect to buy there.
If you want a fun Wikipedia crawl, look up what a Radio Shack tried to do with the personal computer market. Remember the Tandy?
Yeah. Speaking of being out of touch, though...
That's what a Strongbad's computer is meant to be making fun of the Tandy series. Like, shitty, like, computers you'd buy, like, on the shelf.
Yeah, I know. But speaking of being out of touch, though, back to GameStop, we talked about more of that better customer service relationship. Here's a thing that I think older game stores weren't doing immediately, and that is the level of disrespect GameStop has for just physical media in general.
GameStop is pretty infamous for, if a game doesn't sell after a certain amount of time, if they cannot donate it to charity, they have to either destroy it or throw it straight in the dumpster. The amount of waste GameStop does is very well documented. You can go on YouTube and find dumpster runs of people trying to get games out of the GameStop dumpster.
Honestly, I'm tempted to do that sometimes.
Well, this is evidence of it, in case the law enforcement is listening.
They don't know my last name. Rez is not a real person.
He's a dragon. You can't
arrest a dragon.
Don't just fly away!
I am not a dragon. My mascot is a dragon. That's Downscale. He talks at the end of all these videos.
Oh, right.
And is the one wearing the shades.
Right.
You can see him right now.
You can see him right now.
Is in the videos that I make. Until these eventually have video.
Yeah, so
one day.
A lot of the people who actually care about video games are working at, like, indie game stores. Of which there are, like, 5 decent ones in New Hampshire.
Yeah, where we live.
Yes. As it was implied by our previous conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other pretty good ones around Mass, but typically they charge, like, sales tax, so because they're near, like, a highway, they try to upcharge more because the rent's higher.
Yeah, and one thing with newer game stores now, too, is most places aren't really surviving as just a game store. They're all some variation of a hybrid of a game store and a card store and a board game store and an arcade.
Like, there's Neon Bomb over in Manchester, New Hampshire that does the card shop and, like, the comic store and the game store all in one.
Like, Game Underground is practically a fusion of all 3 of those things.
Yeah, Game Underground is a store in Waltham.
They have Magic, they have arcade machines, and they have tournaments for fighting games. They have Fortnite. They try to have a little bit of everything, I guess Jamie does, really.
It's literally for everyone. And not only that, there's a whole bunch of really great places to eat nearby. And so it's kind of in a really nice central location, and you could stay there for a really long time.
That might be an interesting conversation to have with Jamie about, like, his history with, like, running Game Underground. How long has he been doing it?
Quite a while. Well, the series I told you I want to start making eventually, Arcade Armada, is going to involve in-depth interviews with, like, arcades. And I already asked Jamie if I could do it. He says, yeah, do whatever you want. I'd love to do that. So I actually want to come prepared for that, because he's totally into the idea.
Plus, you know, because not to make him sound old, but he probably might have some experience with, like, what game stores were back in the day.
Yeah, we could definitely ask him questions like that. I don't think I'll have him on the podcast, though. I don't think he has time for that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd rather interview him with, like, video camera and mic and everything when I have the better equipment for that.
That's fair. Another phenomenon that's happening is a lot of these indie stores, even GameStop, are getting into the market of rebuyers.
Yes.
Rebuyers are the people who now have adult jobs in their 20s to 40s, and they remember games they might have traded away or their parents gave away or threw out if your parents had no soul.
Yeah, thankfully mine did.
And they want to buy those games again, and because of that demand, the prices go up like... Whew.
Yeah, and you're the one who keeps getting super... like you start smiling, go ear to ear when you know your PS2 games are going to start shooting up in price, because now kids of not Gen Z, but I guess later millennials, maybe early Gen Z and later millennials are going to start getting nostalgic for PS2 and like Xbox and GameCube now.
Well, the thing is, with my collection, it's just games that I'm personally interested in. I don't collect the games that are legitimately valuable for the most part, or the ones that have remasters. Like, I don't care about Dot Hack. I don't care about... To a certain extent, I would like to try World of
Dot
Rose.
Hack on PS2 is still insanely expensive, though, even though it's been remastered.
I have a friend who has the first 4 of them, like, complete.
Yeah, they're expensive. I think owning all of them is still a couple $100.
Yes, and then there's also, the second Dot Hack series. There's Blood Will Tell. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I have.
That game is under $50.
That's mostly more so to do with scarcity, though,
yeah.
because the Japanese copies are like nothing. Because Japan loves RPGs, and America's like, ugh.
And it's a Tezuka property, so it's like, it's a big deal. So these rebuyers are, combined with the eBay effect, have driven up the price of a lot of, especially like NES, Super NES era games. N64 especially. Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah.
Is the prime suspect of this.
I mean, it was already, 75 new anyway? And it was printed very low quantity.
I remember when it was new, went to like a Costco. It wasn't Costco. It was like the equivalent in this area. What was it? What's the one up in the hill?
I don't know.
BJ's. They had a big standee of Conker 64.
I'm not from here.
I remember seeing it on the shelf. Yeah,
God, I want that.
I don't know if there was like a standee, but I remember there being like a prominently displayed Conker 64 thing.
Yeah, Conker came out at the very end of N64's lifespan. It was rated M, which very few N64 games were.
And Rare published it directly. It was not Nintendo. Nintendo gave
Rare didn't just deposit; they developed it.
I know, but they published it directly themselves because Nintendo was like, "We're not going to have this be a Nintendo-branded game. We don't want the bad publicity of having an M-rated crass game."
It was still an N64 box.
Yes, but they just it's a standard. We license you to produce these cartridges.
Oh, right. So Nintendo didn't put their...
Nintendo did not distribute Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, I saw it at Blockbuster before, and then later on played it years later when I actually found it. I think I should have a copy I borrowed. I don't remember. I have it, though. I can't remember how I have it.
Another big thing is, like it or not, these games are aging.
Yeah. Oh, also throwing our nail in the coffin, or at least what's adding to all this value, YouTubers.
Yes, My Life in Gaming, Gaming Historian, Metal Jesus Rocks, etc.
Well, let's start with ABGN, honestly. Let's be real here. Start with ABGN and snowball from there.
Whenever a game is featured on either one of those YouTuber channels, GDQ, often the values spike on eBay.
Yeah. In fact, Metal Jesus...
Pepsi Man, that happened to Pepsi Man big time.
Yeah, in fact, Metal Jesus often does get threatening comments on his videos about his hidden gems, where they talk about... Most of the time, a lot of times, it's PS2 games, because the library is so large, but really just anything that's a pretty decent... It's not a great game, but it's a pretty decently good game that you can get for a cheap price that's not well known, and then overnight it just goes up $10 to $20 up in price. And people freak the hell out.
I mean, arguably the same thing happened when, virtual console releases happened. Earthbound went up in value when that came out on the Wii U virtual console, right?
Wait, how exactly? Oh, because the game came out on virtual console, people wanted to own the real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Similar phenomenon.
Yeah, I could see that happening. That actually might have probably been the start of some of these retro spikes when you could download them on the virtual console.
Yeah, definitely. When the idea of having these games be a continuous presence came about. Plus, the physical media itself is aging. I mean, a lot of old Atari cartridges work, but there are a lot of games disc rot is a major problem for CD and DVD.
Cartridges are going to outlast discs much longer, which is why I often do buy cart games more than disc games, unless the disc game is really cheap. It varies.
So, for anyone who's listening who's a collector and you don't have a cart dumper, we really strongly recommend that. If you also pirate things, that's one thing, but if you want to back up your save data and stuff, you should get one of those cart dumpers. Yeah,
there's quite a few better ones coming out now too. They're more affordable. I'm probably going to grab one eventually. I don't think you just use the Retron too, which is kind of funny. The Retron 5 you can actually just use the backup saves.
Yeah. Plus, discs get scratched.
I think you're fine with anything PS2 and up. We haven't seen much cases of disc rot yet.
Saturn disc rot is widespread.
Early CD-based games are the absolute worst. Sega CD, Saturn...
Neo Geo CD.
Don't even...
Turbo CD.
Yeah, I won't even bother with those.
This is a very, very, very esoteric point, but the Pioneer Laser Active is one of those examples. Laserdisc systems in general, and Laserdisc arcade games even, are very, very...
I think if you honestly buy a Laserdisc, it's mostly just to look at the really cool, box that comes in, because it's not going to work.
Slight tangent to explain the Laser Active. It was a hybrid system that was effectively like this giant 80 unit you could buy. And Laser Active games were Laserdisc-based games that paired with a Genesis. So, effectively, you were running a game off of the Genesis hardware that was stored on the laser-active disc. But the problem is, Laserdisc is a linear medium, so you would have to load the game part and then load like the video parts when they were necessary by seeking out the disc. So if all the parts aren't working perfectly, then your game can't be played. In regular Laserdisc games, this was a big deal. Like back with when Dragon's Lair was super popular, not only was the hardware like overheating and failing in these cramped arcades that were too hot, it's just the disc would get overly scratched and overread and stuff.
I did not know that.
But the Laseractive was not only unbelievably expensive for its time, because it came out in 1992 and all these fancy games. Like, you could play like a shmup that had like these kind of weird visuals in the background that were all FMV powered.
I didn't even know what the hell Laserdisc was in 1992. I was watching Disney VHS tapes, man.
But to Melora's point, Laseractive was such a weird esoteric piece of hardware that it only had a handful of games, that it's among some of the rarest games you can buy.
I believe it. I definitely believe it. But I think what I was saying before, I think PS2, GameCube, Xbox, I think anything later CD and early DVD are probably still safe.
Yeah.
They were manufactured with a lot more care and quality checks. This is why also early music CDs, too, worthless. They're done for.
Or there's often horror stories of parents, you move out from your house and your parents throw out your games like, well, we kept your CDs because they're going to be worth something someday.
I'm glad I didn't have parents that stupid.
Because parents, they thought it would be like vinyl.
Vinyl isn't really worth anything either unless it's pristine. You can still get vinyl easy, not to mention it's still manufactured.
It really,
vinyl is
it depends on the vinyl.
Vinyl's always been like a very trendy thing, too.
Yeah.
If it's an original and it's in fantastic shape, sure, but 9 times out of 10, it's worth about as much as the damn CD or cassette.
Like the stuff you find at flea markets?
Yeah.
It's usually not really that good.
Yeah, no, they're beat to hell.
Speaking of flea markets, that's a little like market outlier that we have not mentioned.
Yeah, that we love doing, actually.
There are a lot of interesting little flea markets in the area, and there are people who are very, very knowledgeable who go at 6 a.m. when they open, and they immediately jump on all the game people just to get the best deals.
Yeah, it does.
They take advantage of people who don't know what they have.
Yeah, which, I mean, okay, I admit I would do it too, but... You know, we do it more so as kind of just a fun thing to go out and do, and if we get really lucky, cool. If not, fine. I have to admit, though, I do have a huge issue with, like, the people that show up, and you can just automatically tell that have one-up mushrooms decorating the back of their fucking car.
We're not calling out any particular people.
No, nobody in particular, but this does have to be said. They're just killing it for everyone. They really are, because, okay, it's awesome to find somebody, I admit, who has a box of old games and they're really good. And like, yeah, I'll give you $100 for this box. You got really lucky, cool. It's another to just intentionally show up with the mindset, I'm going to spend hundreds of dollars so I can resell these as fast as possible for more. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. I don't approve of that. That's just insanity.
I mean, to a certain extent, some of the local game stores, like the indie game stores, do some hustling in terms of trying to sell off lots of games at once.
Yeah, no, and that's oftentimes why it is best if you want to get good deals, especially at these flea markets, let alone the game stores. A lot of local game stores will give you good deals too if you, hey, I'll buy this, but I'll also buy that. Would you cut me a deal and make $10 off if I get them both?
Haggling is very important at these sorts of venues.
Hey, you guys never want to do that. I love haggling.
Plus, a lot of these people have been around for a long time. Like, there's one person we met at a flea market today who had very clearly been in the business of selling games for decades, and he was relating a story about how he had a lot of Dreamcast games at his old store before he had to stand at this flea market, and he had to sell it off quickly because the PlayStation 2 was the hot item. And it was so interesting to get that kind of perspective while also negotiating for prices on other games.
It's so amusing to think about, too, because now we know in our head anything that's going to be expensive is usually something that was a failure. Where back then, people would think if something was a failure, it's worthless. Even the Wii U, we know, is a failure console. That is the next Dreamcast. It's going to be insanely expensive eventually. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a broader conversation about what the Wii represented Nintendo's corporate strategy at the time and how it would reflect. failed to capitalize on the gains of the Wii.
It's not even just that. It's another thing that's like a nightmare to probably even ever emulate anything that doesn't get ported because of its control pad and everything.
Have people emulated at least the tablet part? Have people isolated the video feed? I know you can like
kinda, yeah, but the thing is, the experience is never going to be the same.
I know that with like Citra, the 3DS emulator, people have like split the screen, and often when people stream DS to 3DS games, they put them on like horizontally.
That was the thing I don't know why Nintendo didn't do. Like, they made the Game Boy player for the GameCube, and that was such a genius idea. Why was there not a DS/3DS player for the Wii U? That would have sold so much.
Actually, what you could do is you could buy DS games to play on the Wii U screen.
That's all you needed.
Literally, you could buy Star Fox Command and like tilt the Wii U pad to the side and play Star Fox Command on a giant DS.
Well, the cool thing, though, would have been to actually play on your TV, though. That was the point. You use the Wii U pad as the second screen.
Well, I guess they didn't want to do that.
I'm just saying it's a missed opportunity. You know what else was a missed opportunity? Pokemon Snap 2 on the Wii U.
Yeah. Nowadays, they would just make it into a Pokemon Go mode.
Yeah, which... God, that game was so innovative.
Again, someone needs to make an Android camera app that like is like a kind of a pastiche of Pokemon Go, but it rates like people's photos and selfies and stuff. Has that been done? It's just like the Professor Oak voice.
You want me to make it?
Just call it like...
I can attempt it.
just call it Snap.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Snap Inc. is a company. We can't call it that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, that name's definitely probably trademarked. We'll talk about that later.
So what's the future of games at retail?
Well, one thing I could tell you for sure, this actually kind of ties into present and future. We talked about several times the relationship between the customer and the seller, whether they be just a common retail employee or someone that just owns the shop and is actually passionate about what they're doing with what they're reselling, or it's just a terrible scalper and is just in it for the money and that's it. I can say one thing that's trending that is not good is getting worse and worse business tactics with pushing stuff on people, is specifically GameStop.
Pre-orders.
The more corporate it is, the worse it is.
Well, GameStop also had, have you heard the GameStop Circle of Life?
Yeah, Mega64 made a video really called that.
For those who are not familiar with it, GameStop had a training thing for their employees where they were like, okay, you sell someone a new game or you sell someone a pre-order, the game comes out, you buy it, you play it. When you're done with it, you go trade it in, you get credit for more games. And it's a continuous circle of things coming in and out of the store.
It's also called ripping off people really badly.
What's so interesting is that Western game buying culture is so different from like Japanese game buying culture to a big degree.
Yeah.
Like in Japan, I know that there are a lot of indie game stores in Japan still.
Well, Japan also is very much against a lot of the idea of rentals and used games.
You can't rent games, you can buy CDs. You can rent CDs.
Yeah, so...
Nintendo destroyed the rental market for games in Japan.
Yeah, it's more likely with Japan, if you were to, say, sell a game, you'd probably still get closer to retail value. Because the retail value was... It's not just that, too. The retail value was already lower. Of the Japanese titles that are more common. Like, a lot of our rare titles here, like the RPGs and stuff, are common. You can go get Chrono Trigger, Inbox, Manual, everything on the Super Famicom for what is the equivalent in yen to like $10 American on average. Sometimes less if you look hard enough in Japan. That's nothing. Chrono Trigger, for the record, is about $200 in America if you want the loose cart.
Yeah. It came out so late in the US, though.
That's another issue, too. They got it, and they got it in droves. Yeah, Mother's nothing.
Here's a fun anecdote about Earthbound. In 1997, Earthbound was $20.
Oh my god.
Really?
In the US?
Yes.
Yes.
Man, the people who jumped on that.
Earthbound was such a bomb in the US because no one cared about RPGs that... Mind you, 1997 was around the same time that Final Fantasy VII came out.
The self-deprecating ad campaign might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, as well as the fact they sold in a giant box with the guide and no other way.
This game stinks!
I don't... That was terrible marketing. I have no idea why.
Meanwhile, like 3 years after Final Fantasy VII came out, you can get the Greatest Hits version for $20.
Black Label's still like $50 though.
Yeah. But for a while, Square Enix still let you buy like the Black Label copies from their website.
You can still order Final Fantasy games from Square's website.
Yeah.
They still sell them and manufacture them, which is honestly awfully nice of them compared to most companies. That's one thing Square is kind of doing right.
Yeah.
That's a nice little touch to fans, at least.
Oh yeah, a little thing that I forgot to mention. Nintendo did a really interesting thing with the Famicom disk system. Remember that?
Oh, you mean in terms of rewriting to the
yes, instead of buying game
not cards, they were like
floppy
discs.
disks.
They were basically magnetic discs.
You would buy a magnetic disc and you could take it to the store to buy another disc. Not only was that innovative for the time, but also introduced the first piracy problem for Nintendo because people were coming out with disc copiers.
Yeah, it wasn't even just buying another disc too. You went up to like a kiosk device similar to a Redbox long before that existed and just insert the magnetic disc and it would write a new game to the disc, and then you would take the disc out and go home and play it, which is a bit odd because when you're collecting Famicom disc games, a lot of them are just rewrites. Like think of like old like VHS tapes that you bought to record stuff off of, which most people just use to make copies or record football games or stuff on TV. Think of it like that, where you don't really, it might say a certain game written on it, but you don't really know what you're going to get.
Here's an insidious idea.
And they were double-sided.
What if, in the future, okay, so your cell phone has how much space?
Mine? 32 gigs, I think.
With the memory card.
There's no slot anymore.
Point is, if a theoretical smartphone had like a terabyte in the future, what if you could go up to a kiosk and then buy a game and have it download onto your phone and then copy it from your phone onto your game console?
That seems pointless when you have internet now. What's the point of a kiosk?
Well, I'm just imagining retail solutions if GameStop goes away to sell you a game, even if it's a digital one.
That would literally be worth less than the digital solutions. No one's going to do that. When you can literally go on your phone, people don't want to go up to kiosks. They want convenience. I mean, obviously, I do support physical media, but I care more about supporting that in the sense of, one, preserving history, and two, not getting ripped off with a thing that I can never actually resell or have any value.
People could go up to kiosks to drop their cell phones into to get $20. People will do anything at a kiosk.
Okay, I believe that, but that's just to get rid of their phone. What I mean is, like, why would you go up to a kiosk to buy a game when you can just flip through the App Store?
What if you're at Walmart anyway to buy an Apple, and you could buy a game?
I don't get your point. You're not selling me on this idea, and I don't think you'd sell a board of directors either.
Fair enough. Anyway, what GameStop is doing right now in an attempt to go and stay alive is they're trying to rebrand to be community gaming centers.
So they're trying to be Funcoland.
Yeah. It comes full circle, huh?
We have the circle of life.
And it moves the soul.
Alright, anyway. Yeah, they've come full circle.
They want to do retro game events, they want to do LAN parties, but indie game stores have been doing this for years.
Yeah, I mean, it's very conflicting, because on the one hand, I'm for this. I'm honestly for this. How about less, firing your employees if they don't get 10 pre-orders a day, and more of that focus on community and more on, especially now that, millennials are having children and everything too, that's the opportunity to, instead of trying to sell them 5 million things, to get them even just interested in the hobby in the first place. Because probably what most kids, first off, just know immediately in terms of gaming is Minecraft and Fortnite. Especially because they're free to play. Let's start.
To an extent, we mentioned this before, but a lot of them are watching, kids aren't watching EBGames. I think that's for us.
Some are. It depends.
Who do you think, who's like the retro game person that you would imagine like a 12-year-old watching?
Vinny. Yes. Vinny and Joel. Joel especially.
So that's so interesting to think about. Like, in the past it was like your friends, and now it's like the internet people.
Well, it's because the videos themselves are very memey and bite-sized, so you don't have to actually totally understand video games even just to laugh at them.
Oh, another big thing.
Even though Vinny and Joel themselves are massive gamers and definitely understand gaming.
Another big thing, retro boxes.
What's a retro box?
PlayStation Classic, NES Classic, Super Nintendo
Yes,
Classic.
and that is, even though...
Those are big retail phenomena.
Yeah, even though the emulation...
Except for the PS Classic, obviously.
Yeah, actually, remember last time I told... Well, you hack it, it's good. But, I even told you, I bought a Super Nintendo Classic for my mom, because that was me and my mom used to play all the time. It was a Super Nintendo, and my Super Nintendo's here. That's mine. So, of course, I bought her little bite-sized one. And, I've emulated stuff on a million different devices, but it's got the same controller feel. It's easier to set up. You just plug it in and play. And ironically enough, she played it with my 5-year-old sister, and she loved it. She loved Donkey Kong Country, which made me happy. So, yeah, that is a good way to introduce these things to a younger audience. But going off on that, yeah, GameStop should be focusing on that if they want any chance of staying alive, because no company will buy them.
I don't think there's anyone who likes GameStop.
Because of the amount of hate and reputation this company has garnered. I mean, it's gone on record of being one of the worst places to work in the actual official polls for this.
GameStop?
In the U.S., yeah. It's been in the top 10 for a while, one of the worst places to work in the U.S.
Moira, you worked as a stalker for a while, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was pretty chill because I didn't really do much but stock, and it was like a part-time thing. I don't really have a lot of experience.
I mean, the one thing I'm sure she probably noticed was like GameStop's probably like generic game cases and stuff. And
oh yeah, there were a lot of those.
It's ones with the kid hanging off of the bag and stuff.
Pretty much.
She was mocking the art of that today, actually, while we were at the flea market. Like, is that
like,
supposed to be a mouth?
Holding a gun, and it was like the mouth did not exist. Basically, it was just like.
I don't know who the hell those generic cases are supposed to be marketed to. I have a few of them. They look like, God, the art style looks like something from. It looks like it's worse than it looks like something off a Nickelodeon like preteen sitcom, like 16 or some shit.
16 was a Canadian show.
Well, it was on Nickelodeon still.
No, it was on Cartoon Network.
That was on Nickelodeon.
I'm pretty sure Cartoon Network showed both Total Drama Island and 16.
No, I'm damn positive Nickelodeon got 16. I don't know why we're arguing this, but
I know that Cartoon Network...
I just remember it that way.
Canadian cartoons.
Oh, it is made in Canada. I get that.
Yeah. Also, you two also worked at a non-gaming specific retailer that also sells games, right?
Yeah,
yes.
FYE. They didn't...
For your entertainment.
Yeah. That store...
Were you instructed to call it FI or FYE?
No, it was FYE. So here's an interesting...
Did people call it FI?
Here's an interesting thing, though. FYE was an evolution of a store called Suncoast.
Yeah,
it's still
I remember
owned
Suncoast.
by Suncoast. It was owned by the company, but they rebranded to FYE. I actually loved Suncoast. Suncoast was a great place to go for a lot of movies, but even better, they carried anime. At a time when anime was hard to find.
They were some of the first big anime retailers, right?
Yeah, especially for high-quality action figures that weren't just sold at KB Toys. Like, all the If Labs figures that were $50 to $60 and high quality.
I remember back when Geneon shut down and when what was that other company that originally had Ava?
I don't remember.
The Texas-based company.
I don't remember.
They had a lot of their ADV, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They had a lot of their stuff big time.
Oh, the dubbing company. Oh, I thought you meant a retail company.
No.
Yeah, ADV. Okay.
I remember they had a lot of Geneon and ADV stuff on their shelves.
I believe that. But anyway, after that rebranding to FYE, they started doing the same issue that a lot of other companies. They have that identity problem. So while I worked there, we carried mostly CDs, but there was also this influx wave of, nerd culture, especially 90s nerd culture, is popular now. So here, buy a Pokemon belt, buy a My Little Pony shirt, buy a Doctor Who mug. Oh, and make sure you tell the kids to buy Dr. Dre's Beats headphones, which are, for only $100 more, you can probably get studio headphones that sound a million times better, but they don't have the Beats by Dre on them, so they're not good.
Remember, Dr. Dre invented headphones as a status symbol.
I have no clue why these exist, but that store was just... Take working at GameStop, multiply it by 10 in terms of how awful it was with pushing the anti-consumer stuff. They had me try to sell magazine subscriptions to anybody that basically signed them up for porn. I'm not even kidding.
Melora, what was your experience with FYE?
Another very short one, another large amount of stocking. They seem to have a lot of anime stuff going on at the time.
So I was in
Vampire Knight, right?
Probably not. I remember getting a Sailor Moon necklace from there.
That's cute. So I was actually the assistant manager at mine, so I got to do everything while I was there. At the Dying Steam Town Mall.
The music was terrible.
Oh, the music was always terrible.
What were the songs that played the most?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber. Oh, God.
Working there, it was a seasonal job again.
The only thing that ever made me happy was when, like, there was one rock song that came on that was okay. I didn't even go, it was just okay. It was like, something that is not.
Was it like a CD that you got from corporate?
Yeah, it was a CD that every time my boss left, I immediately went in the back, took it out, and threw it at the wall. It's like, and then I just picked. I remember at least one cool thing I was allowed to do was take a CD off the shelf and listen to it myself whenever
Did you have
the store was mostly empty. No! We had garbage-ass, vanilla skin-colored computers that ran off of, I have no idea, some really old operating system, probably DOS, and a terrible, terrible outdated point-of-sale system older than me. I'm 29.
I remember that FYE had, like, the touchscreen. Did you, like, scan a CD and listen to, like, song previews?
They did this right at the end after I quit and got another job at a call center and made more money. But let me tell you a fun story with FYE, though. Besides just trying to sell those awful magazine subscriptions, FYE sold hentai. And they weren't very...
Dragon and the Seven Balls?
It wasn't that bad quality, but we did have Bible Black. I'm not kidding.
The most well-known hentai.
Yeah, it was all dubbed hentai, of course. I even one time...
Did you ever sell any of it?
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing is? I sold it to a senior citizen. This old dude just walked up with a stack of hentai. Just dubbed hentai.
Good for you.
Oh man, he was like balding and practically like liver spots. I remember it. I just looked at him and went, "You got it, sir."
How much was it?
Oh my god, he spent like $50.
It's a good deal.
For
like 18.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Especially compared to how much they want to get charged for hentai at at anime conventions.
I'd imagine they would try to fleece you on Bible Black. Here's 2 episodes.
It was funny though. I think the reason, the thing why I think it happened, I think even though he knew what hentai was, the guy was so. I hope he knew what it was. I hope he wasn't buying it for his grandson or something.
I love them animes.
No, I mean I'm sure he's, whatever with it, doing what you think he's doing with it, but
putting it on a shelf and stroking it.
Don't. But what I mean is...
Stroking the cases.
I think, yeah, let's keep this wholesome, I guess. You can Google what hentai is if you really don't know. But I think it's more so he doesn't really want to use a computer to, like, stream it like the majority of degenerates do that watch this stuff. So... He just goes and buys the DVDs from FYE because how much you want to bet FYE just didn't even really realize what they were buying and just bought it.
Yeah, that happens with a lot of retailers.
Oh, it has a Japanese title in it? Yeah, buy it. Throw on the shelf. I mean, it had 18 and up when we stocked it and everything, but that's all it said was 18 and up. That's it. And we had to put, like, little, like, white filters over them, which honestly, barely does anything. Kids could run down the aisle and just move the piece of paper and boobs.
I also remember there was a thing with FYE where they would sell a lot of terrible anime merchandise, like the Naruto headbands. I remember for a while they would sell...
The Naruto headbands are good quality, depending on where you get them.
There was a big thing with... I remember they had a big Vampire Knight mirror in which, like, half of the mirror was just covered up with Vampire Knight shit.
Nick has that. Nick has that mirror.
It's really small, too.
I'll show you it later. I took a picture of it. It's on my phone.
It was there for years at my local FYE.
Yeah, he has a lot of anime merch. Anime and Ruby.
The FYE in the mall that I'm talking about, Newbury Comics, is there now.
Yep.
Which is
kind of like an evolution.
The same thing.
Newbury Comics has been around for longer than FYE in Suncoast.
It's also more local.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't local in our area, but it is here.
I like that Newberry sells books, too. Quite a few of them.
Newberry seems to have a better consistent focus.
Newbury's always been, like, kind of young person stuff. If you go in there, they have, like, a woman's place is in the Resistance kind of shirts.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, not to mention Rick and Morty.
They also have, like, BTS shit up the wazoo.
Oh, ew.
What's BTS?
I admire the rock you look like.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know much about Korean pop music.
That is so interesting to me. Like, both Newbury Comics and Bull Moose Music, which is a regional chain, they have a lot of Korean and Japanese pop stuff all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. Did you guys have, like, local anime stores?
No.
There was a place called Animezaka in Boston.
We went there.
I remember that.
We liked it. It's very small, though.
We went there before and after it moved.
It was cute, but it was very small.
And they used to sell, like, soundtracks and stuff, and, you know, it was very clear what was bootleg.
It was also very expensive. That's why we didn't really buy anything.
I don't think I've ever seen soundtracks there.
Why?
They used to sell that.
Oh.
They used to be a lot. It used to be more than just Ghibli and, like, stationery and stuff.
Yeah, there was a free body pillow.
Free?
Yeah, you know.
Was it used?
Swimming anime.
Swimming anime. You know.
Oh, I thought it was free.
No, the anime's free.
It was swimming anime.
Yeah, it was pretty boy swimming anime.
Ah.
You know what that is now.
Yes. Kiwani, we're here in our hearts.
They're still gonna make it. They're still actually gonna follow production schedules somehow.
I mean, that was not their main campus that got attacked.
No.
Oh, it wasn't?
God,
it was our original location, but they have other offices.
Yeah, they did lose a lot of staff, though.
Yeah.
That was awful.
So, in conclusion, I think my statement has always been, as long as Walmart is around, which will be forever, until the collapse of capitalism as we know it, and maybe the fall of the Chinese government, then we'll have Walmart, and we'll have game stores.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think game stores are going to totally last the same way they have been the past few years. I think we're going to keep having indie stores and like regular game stores for a while, for the next 10 to 20 years for sure. But after that, I don't know, actually. I'm not really all that certain because they're really trying to push... Right now it's being pushed as an option. And as I say before, options are good. But you know damn well the one that companies prefer where they don't have to manufacture stuff and you can't resell it, you can't get it cheaper elsewhere, you have to buy it off their service. We already did this as games as a service way more in depth. I don't think it's going to last much longer. It's going to last longer than, say, cable television. That's going to go away faster. I think it's already kind of dead.
Well, a lot of these companies are trying to make like Netflix and YouTube into cable.
Yeah, but you still have the power of choice at least now, so they can't totally do it the way they used to. Like, they keep putting ads and stuff on everything, but it just makes piracy more viable every day.
Right.
It's the honest truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think game stores are going to continue to thrive as a niche, but I don't think they're going to be as mainstay as they were from the 90s into the... all the way up to 2010 or so, where they were very prominent, as they're already becoming more niche now. And games will eventually stop showing up at flea markets and stuff as much as they are now, like we are kind of trying to take advantage of a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot tougher to get certain kinds of games.
Except for probably Japan, because Japan apparently just is overstocked with video games since they were a bigger deal than there before they were in the US.
But Western tourists like to go there and like buy stuff and just hoard it.
Doesn't matter the amount.
This isn't throwing shade at you guys.
No, I don't have an issue with that because I'm going to do that myself. But
like Super Potato knows of these kind of people and they jack up prices to appeal to them.
That's why you go to Book Off.
Right.
Because they have a bigger inventory.
Book Off is the equivalent of like a Goodwill, basically, in Japan, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
There's Book Off, there's Hard Off, there's Up.
When I finally go to Japan, we'll have an actual episode on like buying stuff in Japan.
Yeah, film some footage and stuff.
Oh, God, yes. I intend to have a better camera before I go.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, I think...
Hold on, let's have Melora's opinion, too. I'm curious. So, what do you think is going to be the future of game stores?
God, I'm so bad at speculation.
What do you want, and what do you think will actually happen?
I think that the enthusiasts are going to continue to go to independent stores. I think that the enthusiasts are going to continue to go to independent stores. And I know that a lot of the brick and mortar, the larger chains, are kind of struggling to maintain relevancy right now. And
Best Buy is going away, right?
Would you think so?
Best Buy has been struggling for years. Not to interrupt you, but Best Buy's had the problem of people go to Best Buy to look at stuff and then they go home and buy it on Amazon.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with a lot of
Best Buy even had their own... Yeah, sorry, go on.
I think that's a problem that's facing a lot of brick and mortar stores right now.
Yeah.
There seems to be, in general, just a lot of window shopping.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this myself.
I do that myself.
At least Best Buy does do the price matching thing, though, and as long as they...
It's not price match.
No, that's probably the reason why they're going to fail.
No, and that's kind of a bad thing for them, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially because if GameStop is literally throwing games out, why not just price match? Better than throwing stuff away. You still got it for basically nothing because you gave people... Did we mention their trade-ins are absolutely abysmal? Although I think, isn't it common... If you're listening to this podcast, you know GameStop's trade-in value is garbage. It's one of the biggest memes on the internet.
Sometimes they're okay. Like, last year they had a promo where if you trade in more games, the trade-in bonus would stack.
That's only good if you're trading towards like a console or something. And you're usually trading in games that you know are going to be worthless soon.
Yeah.
Never trade in like your niche RPGs or fighting games that may never see a reprint. Go ahead and trade in every Assassin's Creed, because if you don't trade in after beating it, you know you're getting half your money already. It's just going to be $1 soon at a flea market like I just saw today.
Or they'll turn the servers off and you can't get certain content. We talked about this before.
Yep, we did. But yeah, Best Buy, I think that's a nice thing. At least they do the price matching. Maybe GameStop could survive if they actually start doing that. But at least just price matching something like Amazon. They can't price match eBay, but even just Amazon is something.
We're going to see some weird desperation moves from GameStop.
Yeah, but hopefully they'll try to sell us back to school supplies.
Here's a tip. I don't know if you want to put this in the episode, but look at the, in Downtown Crossing, the GameStop there?
Yeah.
That's one of the test stores.
Really?
It's one of the stores they use to test out new arrangements of, stuff. And new retail concepts.
I might have to walk in there on my way back from work this week. I'm curious now.
And on that same street, have you ever heard of Consumer Exchange?
No.
Or Sex?
No. I mean,
CEX.
yes, but I don't know.
It's a British game chain that used to have one American store, and it was in Downtown Crossing in Boston. That store was so interesting because it was really like old school GameStop in a lot of ways. It reminded me a lot of mid-2000s GameStop. Like, the prices were really competitive. The employees could choose the music. It wasn't just GameStop TV blaring the fake X-Play they play in there.
Yeah, that is so annoying.
And it was kind of fun. Like, it was annoying when you would go in there around Halloween, and they would literally be blaring a remix of Spooky Scary Skeletons on for 20 minutes. This is a real thing that happened to me.
Dude, that's awesome. I'd love to hang out in a place like that.
Where was this again?
This was in Downtown Crossing, near where that street that goes towards Boston Common?
Yes.
That street.
Yeah, where CEX used to be?
Yeah, Sex. And we're talking about Sex in particular.
Wait, that's how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
CEX, apparently.
It's Sex.
Demonetized.
You have to call it Sex.
Demonetized. Not appropriate.
But they closed it down because they were getting robbed too often.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it's for the moment, it's only in the UK. By the way, the UK's gaming situation...
Wait, is that their only location here?
There was their only location.
Yes, They're gone, apparently.
So Sex is only in the UK and Wales and stuff, and then the only other game retailer in the UK is Game, which is owned by GameStop.
Of course. So they're probably just as bad.
Yes.
Alright. I mean, yeah, I think that basically covers it. I mean, we already did a segment on streaming and everything, but that's definitely going to take a bite out of this. I think indie game stores thrive. Corporate brick and mortar is probably going to go away unless they do something really, really clever to shake things up like GameStop is trying to do, since they cannot get a buyer to buy their company.
I think I'm enthusiastic about the future of independent gaming retailer because honestly, To a certain extent, and the environment is an important thing, and we should be playing old games instead of just forgetting about them in lieu of just the sequels, you know?
Yeah, one thing I would like to state, though, and we did this in Nostalgia Attack, is we should be playing old games to enjoy them and learn from what they did well, but we also shouldn't just be only playing old games. I know we talk about retro games a lot on this, but it's important to have that healthy balance.
Yes. We still play new games.
I still buy new games quite a bit, and not just new games that are like old games. I still play almost every genre but sports. Or the same shit thing that was like made every single year to make money. I usually avoid those kind of titles.
Right. I think we're at the best point in terms of appreciating old games than we ever really have been. Because we have the YouTubers making content about these games, making sure people remember these games. We have people getting into retro stuff. Like, you have that kind of teenager who's in your server who's interested in retro games, right?
Oh, yeah, Time?
Yeah.
He wants me to get back to streaming so bad.
So there are people who are young and not just playing Fortnite and Minecraft. Not that they're bad games. Like, I'm not a fan of either of them, really, but I think there's still opportunity for them to get into retro stuff.
Minecraft I have very little against because any of its awful stuff has to do with the Microsoft buyout, which, you know, I don't blame Notch for selling it. I already told you how much I hate Fortnite and what it stands for, but I have nothing against the Battle Royale genre. Just Fortnite itself. I hate Fortnite itself.
God, did you hear Kojima's quote about why the only way to make a game that sells nowadays is to put people on an island and have them shoot each other?
No. I'd love to hear it because honestly...
He said that on Twitter, basically. That's like the surefire way to make money nowadays, but he doesn't want to do that.
Good!
No, he's just going to put people on an island and have them carry babies around.
Alright, the fact we're talking about fetuses, maybe it's time to end the podcast.
It's time for Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus.
America has gone to shit.
It has, but it always has. You're just more aware of it now because there's a rectangle in your pocket that tells you at every waking moment. Keep the existential dread alive. I'm Gamer Rez.
I'm Deft Beck.
And I'm Melora.
And we'll see you next time. Let us know what you think about physical game stores in the comments, where you think things are going yourself. Love to read them.
Whatever disc your dog ate.
Whatever game you found with a ripped up label because it was probably owned by some random trailer park.
And where Norman Reedus is going to take his Funky Fetus next.
Oh, stop.
Like whatever good game deal you found.
We have the worst outros ever.
Whatever, that's what editing is for, huh? We have a friendly slime who makes it feel like we're having an intelligent conversation the whole time with no tangents.
Yep, chop chop, slave. Laters.